These are the flats.
Yeah, very congested, very tight living conditions. I mean, you don't blame these people if they don't want to stay in the flat all day, right? Especially a child. Originally, the center was set up to help those people in the one-room flats. On the other side, nearer to Jalan Clinic, I think. Where were the one-room flats?
Yeah.
Now it's Tiong Bahru Plaza and all that area,
That's right.
that side. And that was where there were problems like rat infestation and all kinds of urban living problems.
Taman Ho Swee. Taman Ho Swee.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. And people had to use communal toilets, or if it was actually an urban slum. If you think about it, the before the ACT UP houses slum became transferred to the urban setting. And I mean, I think what was said about it is that if you are in a concrete place, no trees and no nature, to alleviate. I would think at least if you have a tree in the background and you're on the earth, you're in contact with the earth, it's still a little bit better. But of course, it cannot. I can't speak for the other conditions where it can be quite terrible. Yeah, so still there were these other social problems because your kampong spirit is no longer there or possible when everybody goes in and locks their doors, or just it's not the same as the kampong.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point because the narrative is usually been by removing the kampong and moving the residents to the HDB, you get rid of the gangsters. Right? Did you ever come across any gangs or gangsters in Bukit Ho Swee?
I think that not so much, but I did see like hints of it, because I think the one incident that stuck in my mind was of this man who with his motorbike, and he obviously looked like one of those secrets, or possible secret society or gangster type, and he was enlisting the help, or he got this little boy who was one of our kids to help him to clean he was cleaning his motorbike, I think, and he just like got this boy to do an errand for him, like get me some water. and that was like, to me, it was quite, it's like symbolic of, that's how they start to recruit them. I think they can be quite nice to these boys to get them on their side. Maybe he would reward the boy with some snack or what, but I have no idea. But then I could see that that's how they get into contact, by engaging with these kids, right? With the children. But I never, of course, I don't know, because we were mostly confined to our own activities, and they wouldn't really show up, show their faces to us so much.
Yeah. There were a number of primary schools in the area, Bukit Ho Swee, East and West. And then closer to my house, there's Delta, East and West, and Havelock.
There's one school called Dog Cat Pig School.
What's that?
Delta Circus Primary School.
That's right. Which is actually quite close to this block. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the girls said, "I'm from Dog Cat Pig School." I said, "What? What school is that?" So actually, the children were very bright. It's not that they are lacking in intelligence. It's the school that makes them look unintelligent. It's the school system. That would be my critique.
Did NC ever work with the schools or had contact with the teachers, the principals of those schools?
No, we didn't do that. Not directly, unless we needed to find out things. But we already had our hands full with just whatever, we had to deal with. on a day-to-day basis.
You all were really under-resourced also, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, physically, the space was just inadequate. And even when we moved to a larger, much bigger place in Jalan Clinic, I suppose it's never big enough. You just expand, beyond it, expand a lot, and they've got.
Yeah, I
So
think
they're
Jalan
able to
Clinic
reach-
would be like a typical, like a provision shop kind of size, wasn't it?
Oh no, we had the void deck, and we could build. We actually, I was involved in designing how we wanted the place to be. We were given the space, and I think it was built specially for us. So during my time, we went under NCSS, National Council of Social Services, and so we got funding when we joined them, and we managed to get this new premises during that time. So that was, I would say, that was a large part of my contribution, because I had to, see to the design of the place and the moving and all that.
Okay.
Then it became a different setting. But we were still in Bukit Ho Swee and just a bigger space. And we thought, oh, you have more room for this and that, But the same problems would emerge, only on a larger scale, perhaps. And then you can get more volunteers and more staff as a result. The resources did increase especially for those who, and Gerard E, of course, has taken over the helm, and has done a good job. So he's now, they have grown hugely.
So one of the statements by the boys in your book that struck me was, one of them said, "We are the Bodoh Ones," right? That they are doomed to fail, and this sense of resignation. How does that capture the mentality of the boys?
I think it's quite typical of any young person who's been through the school system and emerged in failure instead of success. And even for us who succeeded, in the sense that we got through the exams and so on, when we are young, right, when we are students in schools, our entire sense of our self-image, I would say, of whether we are intelligent or not, we have been conditioned to accept the verdict that's given to us by the teachers and the exam system. So if you fail, you are bodoh. It's just human nature to feel that way. And I'm not surprised. And I think it still happens now, but maybe at a more sophisticated level, because more people maybe are doing better in school, and you don't get such an obvious result of these type of boys and girls. Actually, I don't know what the situation is now, whether they have succeeded in schooling the children better in these days.
I think we still have this problem in many of the schools, isn't it?
Yes. And internally, what we cannot measure unless you do a survey or what is, the impact or the effect on the person, the child's self-esteem, right?
Yeah, and I think it tends to pass on to the next generation, right? Because what the parents believe in happened when they were children, and then when the parents had children, they tend to convey these sorts of sentiment onto the children as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because it reminded me that I think that this is how I saw my role. The best thing I could do, that's how I understood it, is that I have to show, and we, the volunteers and the staff, we have to show these young people that we are there for them, to accept them as they are, and to have faith in, or to show that we do not regard you as bodoh or lower class or whatever, but you are another human being who deserves more. And so it's like, now I've come to the conclusion that the most important thing we can do for another human being is to be as kind and compassionate and loving as we can be, to show that person that you are worthy, you mean something. And that is the thing that will make the greatest impact, that will change, if possible, their own self-image, to the point where it is entirely up to them, right? Whether they choose to move on and do whatever, and to honor that, okay, to believe that someone believes in me, or someone cares for me enough not to judge me in a negative way, or to treat me like I'm scum, I'm not good enough. Yeah, that's it.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
And I think that those children, many of them, they did emerge from it stronger, and
yeah,
and they are probably doing well for themselves, good enough.
yeah. Anne Lim always said, right, that within all these difficult children and low income adults, there's always a middle class Singaporean trying to get out. Right? Is that something you also
No,
believe in?
you don't mean Anne Lim, you mean Anne.
Sorry, Anne Wee. Sorry, what am I doing? Anne Wee, right? Yeah, yeah,
What she means about middle class person trying to get out, though.
yeah. You don't understand that.
Can you say that again? Are you sure you're quoting her?
Yeah, I'm quoting her. Yeah, hopefully paraphrasing her at least.
Yeah, I think it was in your book, right? I saw it in your book.
Yeah, yeah, I interviewed her for the PhD, and that's what she told me. Out of long years of social work experience. Yet, if you try to help them, they are always there, ready to take up, that and become
Oh,
a middle class Singaporean
I see.
with the help. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think in spirit, yes. Although I wouldn't use the term middle class, because it depends on what you mean by middle class, and then because we have filters and we'll start interpreting it differently. But I would say that there's in the same spirit, that there's always a real person inside who wants to be the best they possibly can. And we did have some success stories. I think there was a boy who came for tuition, and he did so well in school that he went to Raffles Institution, and everybody's like so proud of him, And he obviously had the academic abilities to do well, but if he didn't get that push or support, he may not have made it. So in that sense, I guess that is what places like that, the family service centers, are there for, to give that little push or extra help. And I think it will be, especially with people, let's say we call them borderline cases, in that they are not so far deep into, the mire in trouble, but you just need a little bit of, you extend a hand to them, they can reach out and you pull them in, or you help them move on and be what they can be. So that is the most rewarding part of the work, I would say.
Yeah, I always consider myself very fortunate, not to have experienced, those frustrations, in my childhood. And I think, my parents were working class people, illiterate. We live in a one-room flat, very close by as well. But I think the difference is, number one, my parents protected me, and they loved us and they had time for us, me and my sister. And the other thing is, I did very well in school. So that
Yeah.
school experience was completely different from the street children of Bukit Ho Swee.
How did you manage the language?
Well, as you can see, my English is better than my Mandarin. So,
Yeah.
again, I was very lucky. I love English, when I was in primary school, and I did very well in it.
You had good teachers, I think.
I had good teachers. Yeah, certainly.
I
Yeah.
think that's also quite important. And because of English being the medium of instruction in Singapore, that was the crucial factor. If you can manage with your English, then you could do well. It was those people who really, really had difficulty with that. And not just Chinese, anybody whose home background spoke a different language and just couldn't break through, or maybe the teachers were not helpful enough. So in your case, I was really interested in your story.
Yeah. One of the people from the NC I interviewed later on, we actually live in the same block,
Oh.
and when I interviewed, he said, your block, our block is actually very complicated, but I knew nothing about this block, block 79, Indus Road. I was completely oblivious, and therefore I sort of avoided, all those dark places.
You stayed in your room and studied all the time, is it?
Well, I never went out. Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Never. You left Bukit Ho Swee, the project, in 1985, right? Why was that?
I burned out.
Oh gosh.
I could survive for 3 years, and then I decided. That was it. I just couldn't handle it anymore. I think my nature and my temperament was not suited. I was not like tough enough, physically, emotionally. So I had to deal with my own issues. And there was the writer in me, and I didn't know I was like neglecting my writing, of course. So that kind of gave me the material to write the book. And I didn't plan it that way. I just had kept a journal for all my most frustrating moments. And then when I quit, I had some time to myself, and I decided to turn it into a little book.
Yeah. Could you say a bit more about that? Why did you decide to write the book?
Well, first of all, after I quit, I had free time. And I because writing, I was an English teacher before, that English is was my profession. So that I suppose there's the writer in me that wanted to express what I thought was a very meaningful experience, which also is shared with others. People like me who never know this existed, these situations. And actually, the first person who's one of the first people whom I showed my manuscript to was Dr. Myrna Blake then. And she was encouraging, and she thought that social workers could read my book too. But in the end, and actually she was trying to help me get a social workers association to support my publication. But they think because I was not a qualified social worker, as such, I was in the arts, and I didn't have a social work degree. So I was a community worker, not a social worker. They didn't want to do it. So in the end, I managed to get Landmark to take on the publication. But basically, it was actually, luckily, I had this journal, because that was where I kept my memories and the feelings. That's how I could remember for the book, And I thought really these stories needed to be told, which, were quite unique in many ways. And it's part of Singapore's social history, right?
Yeah, that's right. I discovered it 2006, 2007.
And of course, it's a bit too short.
Your books are always too short, They're
Yeah.
incomplete.
I do have a problem with that.
But that sounds like a pity, right? That the social workers didn't really take this up. Do you think they read it?
I don't think so. Myrna Blake did. She wrote the introduction for me.
Yes.
It was very good of her. I have no idea. Some of them might have come across my book, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I wanted to ask you, actually, in connection with this, was Bukit Ho Swee part of a network of social work projects? in Singapore? Were there other areas? I mean, we know Toa Payoh had a difficult origins. You know, it was known as Chicago of the East, and then
Really?
Taman Jurong as well. You know, because it was built out of really the swamps and remote from the town. Were there similar sorts of projects, social work projects that you know of at the time?
Actually, we didn't even have time to, to connect with other organizations. Not much unless we went for one or two seminars. So it was only when we joined NCSS that we became part of the big network of. So, but it was more to be under the umbrella so that we could get financial support and social and support recognition also. But our work was well recognized in that the volunteers, the entire group of 40 volunteers, about that number, won the volunteers award that was given. I can't remember which organization, but in the social service sector. And then we were very proud of them for that. And also, I think because the approach we had, there was a management committee that were made up of volunteers who ran for it. So in fact, when I quit, I went back as a member of the management committee. As my contribution. So I think we were a unique group because, first of all, we were all not academics trained in social work. We were kind of a bit out of the box, and we did things a lot by instinct and used our intuition, or we were kind of wanted to work from the ground, and we did get people from the ground. So there was like a very special spirit of volunteerism and social service that I don't think that can be duplicated anymore anywhere, but maybe not necessarily so under today's circumstances. But that was like quite organic, it came out of the situation, and it was the people who made it what it was. And the only result you can measure is by looking at the people that, grew up with us. And yeah, that's it.
Who were the people behind it? Who were these members of the board?
Actually, it was quite a mix of. But we did have Dr. Vasu was one of them, and we did have a social worker. Anyway, I don't have to mention names, but there are people.
Yeah.
A couple of people who actually did. I felt like they were very up there. They were from the academic towers. They didn't really. They were professionals, or they just came out of the kindness of their heart to help with the. It was more like to keep the thing going on that level.
Yeah.
But they were not involved in the day-to-day running of the place or in contact with not much except when we came for functions and all. But anyway, that was how it worked, and they were the ones who helped to get it funded and get things going at that level. But the actual running, of course, so it's like you have different levels of the organization, and it worked, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know how long you stayed with the board. Do you think, coming under NCSS, and that means that it became an IPC, right?
I was a few more years there, but when I was a staff, we were already under NCSS. What's IPSS?
IPC, the Institution of Public Character. So that, okay. Did working with NCSS, did that change the methodology or direction of?
No, not much. It was more. That was more like technically it was for the sake of getting finances going. So it changed it helped in that we didn't have to worry so much about fundraising and channel our energies just more directly with the work.
Could you say something about the book? How it became to be taken up as a literature text for schools?
So actually, Longman was not going to reprint. It was not obliged to, if as long as they finished selling whatever. And it was not like a bestseller. It was a bestseller for a while with Times because we got the NC people to read it. But a friend of mine showed my book to Pearson, which at that time actually went through several change of names. So at that time was Longman's education. It was an imprint or something like that. So they were interested in taking over as so that they can sell it to the schools for literature as lower secondary, so that then we revamped it, to make it more attractive to school students, a bit bigger, and I changed the cover, but actually the drawings are from inside my own drawings. And then several schools, not huge number, but maybe 7 schools, or they took it out for many years. I had they sold, and then they asked me to write the workbook for the student as a guidebook for the students. So I did that too. So I have new drawings, and they are mainly like summaries of the chapters with questions that the teacher can use with the students. I don't know whether the children who had to study my book now hate me for that, because when you have to study a book as a textbook, you can't be enjoying it that much. But at least it was a book with a local context. So I think that's the idea. I did get one student from some school who wanted to interview me for his school project. So I met him. Yeah, actually, I really don't know. I did go to a couple of schools. I think I went to Bukit Ho Swee Secondary School for the
Promote the
essay.
book. Okay.
And some of them did buy my book. I think I suppose the people out there should, social workers and people in beyond social services, they can start writing their own books. There will be so many more new stories they can tell.
Yeah, definitely.
They are doing great work. They've touched a lot of people, I'm sure.
If someone wants to buy the book today, how do they do so?
Yeah, so now it's not for sale anymore. It's the publishers have also recently told me they are not going to print anymore. So I think it's because the schools have probably stopped requesting. Maybe they are changing, after so many years, and there's not much publicity for it. And I only have some copies left. Okay, I mean, if anybody is really interested to read the book, I have a number of copies. I can probably post it to you.
Yeah, one last question, right? Which is about the fire. When you went there about 20 years after the fire to Bukit Ho Swee, did you have any inkling that this was a fire site?
I had no inkling whatsoever. Yeah, the fire did not feature in our lives then.
Nobody told you?
No, and until I saw there was an exhibition, that time there was some publicity, then I started, I realized. But I think when we wrote our annual reports and there was something about the history of the place, then I began to realize, that was how it started. And I think I did mention it in my book.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. So it's interesting that there are people in your group.
So when you found out later on, and when you were writing the book, with this hindsight that, many of these were fire victims, did that allow you to see Bukit Ho Swee in a different light? That you had this kind of history?
Well, maybe it did help me to understand where they were coming from. That would be more the older generation, whereas we were dealing with the like you said, 2 generations later, those kids. So indirectly, it was more to in my probably at the back of my mind that's where the past, the history.
Yeah, I think it certainly affected the parents of these children, right? Like in my interviews, in my book, there are people who said, as long as my children not as bad as me or better than me can already, they don't have to
Wow.
do well in school, as long as they're not a hawker or something, they get a job. I think there's a lot of mindset among the parents about what their children can be, and this might have affected, the children's childhood as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Huh? Definitely, the children will pick up the energy level at the energy level or whatever the parents, whatever is said or unsaid, will be picked up by the children.
And any last words on Bukit Ho Swee?
Yeah, I know what you just said made me think of those boys who were particularly challenging to me at the center. I mean, there was one who was really a terror, and he would just like sit at the ledge and he literally play with his spittle and spit and all that just to annoy me, just to irritate me. And he would he would try to bait me, and I really thought that he would, if he appears, that is the end of the day for me. That's like, oh no. When he doesn't appear, is a good day. And I think that I really had to, or one really has to look behind the facade. They were just not who they really are meant to be. They're just there to get your attention because deep down inside, right, everybody wants you to love them, and especially children. So obviously they didn't get enough of it from their homes and the adults around them. Yeah, that sort of made me think about this boy. And many of them, I think this boy actually, he has died in some accident or something. He probably got into trouble. We only have one life to lead, I suppose. So that's how some people will end up.
Yeah, have you ever thought about what might be a more ideal sort of reform or solution to the problems that happen at Bukit Ho Swee, maybe elsewhere in Singapore as well? Like by the 80s, the community service, social work efforts had become quite well defined in a sense, right? Because the government was now more into the field, and therefore the main idea was to provide social services to help people at risk, including the children. But from an idealistic point of view, like what could be done really to help the children there?
Yeah, it became so overwhelming. You don't know where to begin. Well, one of the things I've learned in life is that we are always, what the problem that appears before us is called a presenting problem. I think it's social work. People know that. We tend to react, like this boy comes and he spits in your face, for example. I didn't do that. I close to it, and then you of course can get angry very easily. And then now when we analyze a problem, it's not like you want to be a firefighter putting out little fires. So the big fire, you have to look at the cause behind the big fire. Talking about fires, and it's always the social structures that we have to look at, I believe. And that's the hardest, what to do about the structures, and also who is the one with the power to make the changes. Down there, we are quite powerless. And then you get into that arena of the decision making, the power makers, the power holders or whatever. But I think you have to get to the root cause and tackle it at that level. So as they say, right, give a man a fish he eats for a day. You have to teach him to fish. And that's what we're trying to do with we thought, okay, children are your best bet. if we can help them with education, then they can go and learn to fish. So that's in the simplest possible way we could.
Does that maybe mean there's some kind of self-help, that Bukit Ho Swee used to have in the kampong, right? That kampong spirit and gotong royong, some kind of self-help and not to be so dependent. So do you think self-help would be one of the ways to look at this?
Well, I think like beyond social services are trying to do that with working closely with the residents and the families. So now they have more resources. They can go and knock on doors and talk to the people and get empower the mothers to bake and sell that, or So the main thing is you have to understand, get to know the people and know their strengths and what the solution probably has to come from them, if they need for small projects. Because we are used to telling people what to do, and I think that's the worst. It's the same with counseling. The old way was you try and give advice and work out a solution. Then they go home and they don't do it because it's your advice, it's your solution. So you have to listen first and then let them come up with the solution. And that's the best I can think of. But the more than that, you are going into politics and social structures and political structures, which is too much already, too hard.
Yeah.
And I think the people up there, if they will take the trouble to talk to the people below and find out the reality of the situation without feeling threatened or being, when people criticize or point out errors, the thing is the authorities then, if they react by feeling like they have to defend their position, then that's the end of it. So we need openness and willingness to communicate and share, to listen to other people as well. Yeah, I mean, if you try and create a utopia or, think of an ideal, it's too much already. It's too overwhelming. But then you have to, first of all, you have to be there and know help to understand or learn, what's the situation, and then do little things with how shall we call it? It's combined effort, Yeah, has to come from the residents, from the people themselves. But you can provide the support, the structure, or you can provide the resources if necessary.
Thanks very much, Anne, for digging deep into your memories. 40, is it 40 years ago? Yeah, that's right.
I dare not think about that.
We shall not talk too much about time. But I think it's really great, that we are able to revisit Bukit Ho Swee and the street children, and you've given us not just memories about what happened in the past, right? But also to think about some of the social issues in our very rich society, but also unequal society. And some of these issues might still be with us today. So thank you very much, Anne.
Thank you.